Welcome to the Hockey Writers Union Junction, a weekly show from our Columbus Blue Jackets insider, Mark Scheig, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from draft day to the trade deadline, he covers everything that happens with the Jackets. So get ready. It's time for another get-together at Union Junction.
Hey, hockey fans, welcome back to Union Junction. We're taping this here on February the 3rd, 2022 in the All-Star break. Everyone's about to get going in Las Vegas and figured this would be a perfect time to have our kind of annual midseason visit with Blue Jackets general manager Jarmo Kekäläinen. The last time that he joined us, he did it from his hotel room in Tampa on the road. And we're always grateful for his time. Jarmo, it's really good to have you back with us.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you. Guess we'll just kind of get going here. The main thing that we're going to talk about with you is just the upcoming trade deadline. And think back to last year and how that all worked out. You end up getting a couple first round picks, which ultimately ended up being very important for you. But it also came at the cost of two longtime players in Nick Foligno and David Savard. So just to kick this off, what do you remember back about last deadline that's really going to stick with you?
Hard decisions, mostly. Players that we grew with as a team, had some success with as a team. Players that we learned to love and have as not only teammates but good friends and good people. So it's always hard to part ways with guys like that, but at the same time, we realized that our prime time with the core group that we had to win the Stanley Cup had passed us by, and we had to make a reset. So hard decisions had to be made, and we have a plan in place where we're going through this reset here, and we're going to build the right way, and that means growing with our young group and adding into it from outside when we see fit for our long-term plan.
I kind of wanted to ask you about just the anatomy of a trade, some things that, NHL fans don't really get to know about. What does that first trade call look like when somebody's kind of checking in on somebody, just in general, and how long generally does it take to get from that first call to making a deal?
It could go on for basically the whole season and up to the deadline, depending on where you are in the standings and where your franchise is at. If you're still in the hunt, you think you can make the playoffs and make a run at it, you're usually not trading anybody, you're adding. And when that hope's gone and you have to go through a reset like we did, then teams know that you're in the selling market there, and so they contact you when they see that you might be selling, and you might have some players that they feel that they could help their team. So that process can take months basically, or it can come up very quickly where teams realize that they may have had another option that's now gone, and then their second best option is with our team. There's many different ways that can happen, but usually it's over the course of the season. You have those conversations, and the GMs around the league, they have a feel for every team, as do we. That what are each team? What are they doing? What's their plan? Are they in the market selling, or are they in the market buying? Are they going for it? Even looking at this year's deadline, you see the teams that are on the top of the standard. They're going to look to add or stay on course with their core group and feel like they have everything they need, whatever it is. But if they're going to do anything, they're going to add. So, it's an ongoing process.
Jarmo, too, with the trade deadline being later this year in March, we normally have this conversation leading up to February. How does that change your approach at all? Or is there any advantage to having a later deadline from your perspective?
No, it's all in the in relation to the where the regular season ends. The regular season ends a little bit later this year because of all the different things on the schedule. Like we were supposed to be in China right now for the Olympics. I was supposed to be there with Team Finland, and many of our players were supposed to be there competing for the Olympic gold, but that didn't happen, and COVID condensed our schedule so that we needed this Olympic break to get some canceled games in. But the original schedule for the season took the Olympic break in consideration. That's why the regular season's going further down the spring, and so does the trade deadline.
You mentioned the Olympics. Even though roster players won't be in there, you guys do still have some skin in the game. How close are you going to be watching that tournament?
Very closely. The two Russian prospects that we have there, they're some of our top prospects, Kirill Marchenko and Dmitry Voronkov. We're very excited about those two guys. Hopefully joining the Blue Jackets here in the near future, and I think they're going to be a big part of this building process that we're going through right now. And Samuel Knasko for Slovakia as well, a third round pick that is doing well and taking part with Team Slovakia there in the Olympics. It'll be valuable experience for them.
Jarmo, I can't believe them saying this, but this is your 10th year as the general manager of the Blue Jackets already. It feels like it was just 2012 not that long ago, but just in regards to the trade deadline, the way that it's been handled over the course of time, like kind of going back to when you first started till now, have you noticed the way that teams handle, or is it different at all, the way that they handle business leading up to the deadline over time? Has their priorities changed? Like, are teams more willing to wait to the off season to make bigger moves, or has there been any noticeable change in your mind?
No, I think it all depends on where they are in the standings and the philosophy of the organization, where they're at, where they think their chances are to win the cup. And the more chances you think you have to win the cup, the more you're going to go for it and worry a little bit less about the future. So I don't think that's ever going to change. Obviously, every general manager has their style of doing things, and that reflects throughout the whole organization. But I think the main principle stays the same, that if you feel that you have a good chance of winning the cup or realistic chance to win the cup, you're going to always try to go for it and put the best team possible on the ice to have the opportunity to compete for that prize that we're all working for.
Does the flat cap at all kind of, since COVID, it's kind of flattened out? Every team seems to have a bit less space. Does that impact you guys' decisions at all?
Absolutely. You can't go over the cap during the regular season, and often, as we saw at the last deadline, there can be some maneuvering around that, where two different teams who held some money for players so that teams that were cap squeezed could fit those players under the salary cap. So there's different ways of maneuvering around it, but that's with the teams that are up against it, it's basically money out and money in type of thing if you're going to add a player. So it's not as easy as it looks, but once you have a little bit of cap space, it also the face value grows as the season gets closer to the trade deadline.
Is it fair to say then, Jarmo, that cap space is either as important or even more important to have as an asset in this current market? I think half the teams in the league are in LTIR and probably want to make some moves and might call teams that have a little bit of cap space. Is that, I know you've mentioned in the past that you'd be willing to do that. Has that position changed at all?
No, that's something that works for our advantage right now, and that's going to be something that we're going to try to see what we can do with the trade deadline as well. So it's valuable currency right now, and teams will know who have that room, and they will be contacting those teams for sure. The teams that are up against it that need to move some money, they'll have everybody else's cap charts, and they'll be contacting those teams to see if we can broker deals for them or take a player that they need to move to make some cap room.
Looking ahead at the 2022 draft, you guys have three big pieces, 3 first rounders potentially in that draft. How how do you evaluate the draft kind of in terms of strength? And is this a draft that you guys would be looking to add more pieces in?
A lot of times people say it's a weak draft, but then we say let's make it a strong one, and that's the approach that we're always going to take every year. And we have 2 first-round picks so far. You know, we still have a lot of time to see what the end result of the amount of picks that we have. But those are going to be important. That's for sure. We saw last summer when we had 3 of them and got really good players as a result with Cole Sillinger and Carson Coolemans and Ken Johnson. So those are going to be huge parts of our future, and that's why this 2022 draft is also so important. But you know, time will tell how good of a draft it is. It's so hard to say right now. You hear the comments right after the draft that, oh, we had a great draft, or people ask me, did you have a good draft? I'll always tell them to ask me in 5 years, because that's when you know.
Blue Jackets General Manager Jarmo Kekäläinen is joining us here on Union Junction. And Jarmo, yes, the process itself, I know Nick alluded to it a little bit earlier, but I know teams get together, they have their scouting meetings, they have their planning meetings. Is that something that you've already had in regards specifically to the deadline, or is that something that will be coming up? Like, how prepared are you for the deadline? How much more work is there to do?
Our scouts are watching games every night in different cities on the pro side, if you're referring to the trade deadline. We had our scouting meetings early January with our pro staff and also with the amateur staff for the draft. So that process is also ongoing. I think we'll bring the pro scouts in closer to the deadline again here into Columbus. Obviously, we have to monitor this COVID circus that we're going through and see what's possible and what's not. But we were fortunate to be able to have those meetings in January, and everybody stayed healthy, and we were productive, and that's what we're hoping to do just before the deadline as well. But with the amateur staff, the next meeting will be the final meeting, which normally takes place after the combine. Now we'll see again if there is going to be a combine. And so we're just going to have to keep an eye on things and be as prepared as we possibly can. But I can assure you that our scouts are working every night and watching games around the world.
So the scouts are out. They're not just watching players outside the organization. There's a lot of guys in your own farm system. Aside from the headline guys, you mentioned the guys going to the Olympics. Who are some players that are exciting and have made big strides this year?
If you're talking about our affiliate in Cleveland, you've seen a lot of them here also. With Jay Christensen, for example, getting his feet wet, and we think he's going to be a good NHL defenseman. He's had a good season in the American League. He's a very productive offensive defenseman in the American League. He's probably not going to take Zach Werenski's ice time away in the near future, so he's going to have to round his game up a little bit to create a role for himself on the NHL level. But he's a defenseman that we believe in. We've seen Liam Foudy up here a couple of games. He's making progress, taking steps. Unfortunately, injured right now. Trey Fix-Volansky is another guy that we believe is a real good prospect. Josh Dunn, he played for us last year and then taking strides this year on the American League level. Another guy who's unfortunately hurt right now. So we've got a lot of good prospects growing there, and obviously on the amateur side as well. Around the world, we get Spozil and doing very well in the Western League. I mentioned Knazko already. He's in the Olympics, plays for Seattle in the Western Hockey League. We'll see Carson Coolemans here this weekend against Ohio State, Friday and Saturday. That'll be exciting. He's the last one of our 3 first-round picks last summer, and defenseman who's having a very good season in Wisconsin as a freshman. Guillaume Richard, we've watched him a lot in Providence, making very good progress as a freshman on D as well. Nikolai Makarov in Red Army team in Moscow has played some KHL games early on. our scouts loved him and development coaches loved him in the tournament in November. Big defenseman who's got great mobility and skill. So I'm probably forgetting a couple of great ones, but those guys in particular of Kent Johnson. Everybody talks about Kent Johnson all the time. I've gone to see him myself in Michigan, and they have a great team and an unbelievable load of talent on one college team, and he's well over a point a game as a sophomore in college, and doing some things that are going to be very exciting, very entertaining, and he's got special skill. Just needs to get stronger. So he's a very, very exciting prospect that we can't wait to have sign and play for us here in Columbus. But at the same time, we're always going to be patient with the young players and make sure that they develop the right way and get strong enough to have some success. But we've got a lot of exciting things with our prospects going, and some of them have grown into big roles now with the big team too. We kind of had to wait a little bit for Alexander Texier to bloom on the NHL level, and this year he's finally breaking through, and this has been one of our best forwards so far this season.
And Jarmo, you just got done mentioning the excitement of the future. I think that's what a lot of people believe, given the way that the draft has gone, given the way that development has gone. That's obviously going to have an impact on the current roster, and you guys are constantly watching over that. I guess just how could you see it play out over time, just in the sense of, that these prospects are pushing for playing time, and that there's going to have to be some tough decisions on some key players here. Just how close are these prospects to being able to push for legitimate NHL time in your mind?
Well, I think their play will always tell us whether they're ready or not. That's our job, to make sure that we put them in a situation where they can succeed. So again, that's an ongoing process, and with young players that can fluctuate a little bit with their confidence level and also fatigue of an 82 game season, and that's where we have to adjust too. But time will tell. I can't put a timetable on that. We'll have to watch games. We'll have to watch practice and watch their development to see when they're ready to take more of a role.
You guys have, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
Okay. You guys have kind of, the team looks a lot different this year than it did last year. You got a new leadership core, a new head coach, a bunch of new stuff going on. Boone Jenner in particular has kind of blown up this year. He's having a career year. What do you really think about in how he's done in his first year as the new leader on this team?
Doesn't surprise me at all. We all know Boone, and we know his work ethic. We know his intensity, his will. He plays the game the right way. And for him to have that success in the offensive end, as he's done it before, and now he's getting a little bit more of a role. He's played in the power play all year and doing what he's always done, 5-on-5 and then the penalty kill. So he's a huge part he's the heart and soul of our team, and that's why he's the captain. So it doesn't come as a surprise.
We'll do a couple more with Jarmo here. And are you starting to see the signs of what Patrik Laine could eventually be for your team? Well,
there's been glimpses of his skill, and when he's on top of his game, he's a dangerous player. We've seen him score 4 goals in the last 2 games, and he talked about slumping in that department before. So it can turn around very quickly. I think the biggest thing for him is to always be moving his feet. He's a big frame, big guy that could really protect the puck when he's moving his feet. And when he's doing that, he can create a lot of offense, and we all know he can score goals when he gets those opportunities, and he'll get more of them when he remembers to move his feet. It's been a tough season for him too. I'm not making any excuses for anybody, but we all know what's happened in his personal life and with the injury that he had. So we're going to give him time to recover from all of that and work on his game, But every team needs goal scoring, and hopefully he'll get on a roll now.
And a couple of I know you've kind of run into some injuries as of late, and many of them have kind of a defined time frame. But the one that hasn't, and I'm curious if you have any update on, is Daniil Tarasov. Is there anything that you can say as to how he might be recovering, or how that's just going?
Yeah, Daniil's progressing now, and we'll know more in about a week on where he's at. He's starting to get on the ice a little bit now, and get into the goalie activities on the ice. So that's encouraging, but we'll know more once he ramps up the activities and gets a little bit more into it.
Did you have any others?
Yeah, this one's Jarmo. This one's a little off the cuff, so I apologize if this is too personal. But I noticed that you post a lot about pickleball, and you guys have a staff tournament about pickleball, at pickleball. A pickleball tournament. How did you get into pickleball, and what do you have? Are you like super passionate about it? What's the deal?
Yeah, I am actually, but it started. My number one sport beside hockey has always been tennis, and I love tennis, and I play tennis a lot here in Columbus with a couple of buddies of mine. One being Freddie Modine, the old Blue Jacket, and the great NHL player. He's a great tennis player as well. But it was another guy by the name of Wendell Tucker that I play tennis regularly with. And he asked me, he said, why don't you come and play pickleball with us? And I was first a little skeptical. I'm like, pickleball? Isn't that for the old guys? So I went to this group on Saturday that had about 16 guys playing. And a lot of them were older than me. And they kicked my ass. So I was like, oh, this is interesting. I better get a little more serious about this. And so it kind of hooked me right away into it, and ever since I've been playing pickleball regularly. We have a great group of guys, about 30 guys in this text chain that we play at Wedgwood in Powell, and it's very competitive. There's some old professional athletes in that group. Kent Merker, old Major League Baseball pitcher, for example, and Freddie Modine, as I mentioned, and a lot of great former athletes among that group as well. So it's competitive, but it's fun, and it's an ever challenging game where you can get better in so many different levels. So that's what makes it so intriguing for me, that it sort of never ends, where you can improve your game in so many different areas. I even built a pickleball court at my cottage in Finland.
Do you win?
Depends on the day. There's some good players in our group, but it's a good day when you win, and it gets me mad when I play badly and end up on the wrong side of it.
I'll end you with one last question here, going back on the ice, Jarmo, and it's about just the defense, because that's certainly one area that we knew was going to be, Werenski is going to be the clear number one after the Seth Jones trade. You brought in Jake Bean a lot. The future looked bright with him. Adam Boquist, another one. The future looks bright with him. Andrew Peak has really stepped up this year. Just overall, how have you seen their development? How exciting is the future? But then also, you miss a guy like David Savard too, who's somebody who is always a physical defenseman. You have Gavrikov who can play that role, but how important is that to you? You've always stressed building from the blue line and in, to be able to have somebody like that on your team, like that real physical shutdown defender.
Yeah, I think it's been a bit of a challenge for us this year. We knew it was going to be, but I think there's I don't know if I should use the word simple fix to it, but some of those defensemen you mentioned are very talented, skilled defensemen, but they need to get a lot stronger in order to defend effectively on the NHL level. And when I'm saying simple fix, it's a lot of that is will. If you want to get stronger and you really make the commitment to get stronger, you will get stronger. And there's certain limitations on your body type and all that with different guys. But if you really put your mind in, if you have the commitment and will to get stronger, you will get stronger. But you can't go into the gym to get hockey sense. and that's where the difference is. And they have the sense, they have the feel, they have the instincts for the game. They need to get a lot stronger. They know who they are. I don't need to name them here. And that's been talked about and will be talked about. And then we'll see where the commitment level is, and then we'll make decisions on the future of the team. But it is important. It will be real important for us to get stronger defensively. And it's not just the defense either. It's a 5-man unit that always should defend the house, as we call it. And it doesn't matter if you have 2 6'5" defensemen weighing 230 pounds and are physical. If your forwards don't come as a unit and defend as a unit, the two guys will not be able to defend against a team like Florida, for example, that always attack with a 5-man rush and 5-man unit. When they attack as a 5-man unit, if you don't defend as a 5-man unit, you got no chance. There's going to be a breakdown, and then it's going to be an odd man situation, whether it's 2-on-1 around the net or 3-on-2 out of the corner. And the good teams, the skilled teams, they will capitalize on those. So you need 5 players to defend the house, not just physical defensemen, but everybody committing to the style of play, the system, and committing to battling, playing defense and playing it, doing it the right way with the active stick and the battle hard mentality.
Well, Jarmo, we very much appreciate you taking the time here. Where you are you in Columbus right now, or are you in Vegas with Werenski? Where does travels take you?
No, I'm at home. We have some meetings this week, and it's a good time to catch up with a lot of phone calls. And today we're staying home because of the weather, but yesterday we were at the office all day watching video and looking at how we can improve our team now and in the future, and that's what we'll be doing tomorrow again. So
that's what they do every day.
We don't get an all-star break.
Never a day off in the National Hockey League, that's for sure. It's Blue Jackets General Manager Jarmo Kekäläinen. Thank you so much for the kind of little bit of an annual tradition. We meet around mid-season to have this discussion, but we really appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule to join us here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. And fans, stay tuned. We're actually going to react to this, so we'll be right back, and me and Nick will talk about what would just happen here. Hey fans, welcome back to Union Junction. I know you just got done watching our conversation with Blue Jackets General Manager Jarmo Kekäläinen. Before me and Nick here are going to talk about some takeaways, what we learned from that conversation. But before we do that, this week's episode, we're going to make sure that we're going to push our Olympic coverage here at the Hockey Writers. And I'm not sure if you've seen it out there on our main account or for some of our writers, but with the games in Beijing getting underway here, our men's and women's hockey coverage, is pretty awesome. I mean, coverage of all the different teams, different angles, from the games to the rosters, you name it, the Hockey Writers has you covered. So make sure that you are following the Hockey Writers, follow our writers, and you will not miss anything when it comes to coverage of the games in Beijing. There might not be NHLers over there, but there's still plenty of interesting stories. There's prospects, there's former pro players, a lot of neat stories out there, and we're going to make sure that we tell it to you here at the Hockey Writers. So make sure that you follow, subscribe, do whatever you got to do. You will not miss anything that we have to offer.
Just do it.
Just do it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Just like what Nick said.
TheHockeyWriters.com.
That's it. So let's talk about what we just heard from Jarmo. Nick, what really stood out to you from the conversation that we just had?
Well, I think this is what we're going to talk about a lot here, is just general excitement for the future. We asked him kind of about the pipeline, and I was expecting maybe 2 or 3 names, but he kept going on and on. They were just adding more and more names. Somebody that I didn't even realize was going to be a big deal. And they mentioned Nikolai Makarov, which is a 5th-round pick from this year. He's been playing in the KHL this year as a 19-year-old defenseman. He's 6'4", big guy. That's somebody who that's a big nugget, I think, to take from this is, there's a lot of more depth guys, those later rounds. He's a 5th-round pick. There's a lot of those depth guys that are potentially going to make an impact here and that they're pretty high on. What about you? What do you take from that?
Exactly. I think that the point was made. He mentioned everybody knows who Kent Johnson is. That's kind of the obvious name. But you mentioned how many names he ultimately mentioned to us. And that should give some excitement to Blue Jackets fans. Kind of, they're seeing the product on the ice right now. Jarmo even mentioned, if you're not a 5-man unit, especially against the Florida Panthers, you're not going to have success. And it's pretty obvious the results are telling. So fans are kind of wondering where things are going to go. Well, there's a belief within that room that, that they have a plan. He clearly indicated that it is a reset and that they're going to go with the young guys. And, they're going to evaluate everybody to see, when they're possibly ready to, for a spot. And, certainly guys are making their case to have more significant roles on the team. But I think we have to expand our horizon to just outside of the obvious names. We mentioned Makarov as somebody that I think is going to be a very interesting player. Samuel Kanosko is somebody who's going to be a very interesting player. He's playing in these Olympics, actually. This wasn't brought up, but Slovil is another guy who's playing with Connor Bedard in the WHL right now, is going to have an impact on defense at some point. And there's a reason why many people think the Blue Jackets now have one of the best prospect pools in the NHL. And it's pretty clear that the way Kekalainen spoke, that he's real excited about that. And just knowing that, it's going to take a little bit of time. Guys are going to have to get stronger, obviously. We see it out there. If you're going to play in the National Hockey League, you have to have a certain level of strength, and that's something that they've prioritized. So to me, they know what the issues are. I mean, they don't have to mention names. We see it, on a pretty consistent basis. But to know that they know what that is, they're going to take steps to address that. I don't get the sense that the reset is going to take years upon years. We're not talking like a 5-6 year process here. But it's going to take a little bit of time because it's still obviously a very young team. And I'll be really curious now to see how they handle the deadline, because he admitted talking about cap space and possibly utilizing that to their advantage. Said half the league is in long-term injured reserve. And he didn't necessarily discount the possibility of bringing established players in too, if you really listen closely to him. Just whatever is going to help the team is the way that he's going to approach it. And they're constantly looking to get better, and I think that's exciting.
I think one of my favorite things that he said was mentioning this year's draft. He said, let's make it a strong draft. So like any weaker draft, he tries to make a stronger draft. And he's done that. I mean, you look at Chinikov was, that's a late first round pick that nobody expected to do anything. He's playing in the NHL. There was Kirill Marchenko, who he's very excited about. That's a 2nd round pick. Yep. Voronkov, that's a 4th round pick. This is the kind of guy who can make those, weaker drafts look a little bit stronger. And that it was really cool to hear his kind of perspective on that.
Yeah, to be able to identify talent, because there are guys all throughout the draft. If you look and do your homework, heck, the guy that scored the game-winning goal in the Stanley Cup final back when it was the Penguins against the Predators was the last pick in the draft. It's Patrik Hornqvist. So if you can get somebody of impact like him as the last pick of the draft, you can get value everywhere. And one of the things that, just didn't really come up, but look at where the goaltenders were drafted, whether it be Merzlikins, whether it be Korpisalo, whether it be Tarasov. Tarasov's injury was the reason that he fell. And the Blue Jackets said, thank you very much. And now he's considered even more highly regarded than Elvis Merzlikins, and he was a later pick. So that's the kind of thing. They're good at evaluating talent and being able to get it later in the draft and using it to take advantage. It's just they still have to bridge the gap. The one thing that they haven't been able to do is land the Sidney Crosby type, is land the Alex Ovechkin type. Could this possibly be the year for them that they land a guy like Shane Wright? Maybe if the lottery balls fall their way, or maybe even the year after is, Connor Bedard and Matvei Michkov are sitting out there. If you get one of the first 2 picks in 23, you're holding a golden ticket. So yeah, they do need a little bit of luck to get the real top guys, but they're still finding other ways to be able to make a good team. And that's to their credit. That's their scouting staff. That's them constantly doing their job every day. There's no all-star break for them, like they said. The work is constantly going, and it's easy to see why. They've been through this process before. When he first got there, they had to kind of go through the same thing, and they made the playoffs for 4 straight years, including having a 108-point season. So there's precedence there. It's just now going through the process again.
Yeah, the Blue Jackets have, throughout their franchise history, they've all been more of like a blue collar team. Those good two-way players. It is interesting and really exciting, I think, to see some of those more skill level guys. I think it kind of started with the acquisition of Patrik Laine. He's more of a pure skill guy. Then they drafted Kent Johnson, who's more leaning on the skill side of things. And it's continued through the Jake Voracek trade and all this other kind of stuff to see that shift from their older identity, which got them their first playoff round win, but didn't necessarily get them the Stanley Cup. So it's interesting to see how he's kind of shifted mentalities after that.
Most definitely, for sure. Any other takeaways that you had from the conversation before we wrap it up?
And not really, just super excited that Jarmo took the time to come on the call with us.
Yeah, I know we can't thank him enough.
He's awesome.
Time out of his busy schedule, even talked pickleball with us. So that's, it's really, really cool. This is the second year now that he's done this around this time of year. This is really the only time that we ask for him to come on, because the rest of the year they're constantly doing stuff. So for him to be able to talk and get us ready for the trade deadline, that's greatly appreciated. And they're going to be a team that many people are going to watch, because the way that the Eastern Conference is set up right now, the top 8 teams are pretty set. So unless something dramatically changes right away after this All-Star break, it seems the Blue Jackets again are going to be looking to sell. And you kind of alluded to that a little bit, that the good teams know who they are. They're going to make the calls. It seems Jarmo's already taken some calls here. So I think they know where this is going to go. They're already eyeing the future. But, I think many of us realize that this wasn't going to be the year. It wasn't expected that they were going to make the playoffs. But that doesn't mean that there isn't going to be storylines. The trade deadline is going to be interesting. They might be able to get some real good picks, prospects, maybe even some established players in the right deal. They're willing to take on some salary cap space because they have space and half the league does not. Teams will certainly call them. So there's a lot of intrigue. And then if you add the fact that Kent Johnson might make his debut, if Michigan season ends, Marchenko might come over, make his debut. There's never a dull moment with this team. Little frustrating now to watch them, but that's to be expected. That's growing pains. The excitement is only going to start to build. And there's a chance they might even have as good a draft in 22 as they did in 21, as you mentioned, with them creating a strong draft themselves. So good stuff from Jarmo. Very much appreciate his time. And fans, we very much appreciate your time as well in joining us and being able to hear from him on a lot of interesting topics. We'll be back here next week at this time. We'll have a lot. We'll talk about what happened with Werenski at the All-Star break. They have a 5-game road trip coming out. Going to be against some real tough teams out here. So never a dull moment with the Blue Jackets. Thank you for joining us. Make sure that you hop on the Hockey Writers, catch our coverage of the Blue Jackets, the Olympics. We're going to start to drop our prospect profiles coming up here in the next little bit, starting, I believe, in the month of March. We're going to get you ready for the 22 draft. We'll get you covered from all angles, but without you, we don't have a job here. So thank you for joining us. Hope you all have a great week, and we will see you next time here on Union Junction.